What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Atomic Blonde. Atomic Blonde is an action film that was directed by David Leitch and is based on the 2012 graphic novel written by Antony Johnson entitled The Coldest City. So Atomic Blonde takes place in the year 1989 during the Cold War and primarily follows Charlize Theron's character, an MI6 spy agent named Lorraine Broughton. Lorraine is sent to Berlin to team up with a man named Percival, played by James McAvoy, as the two attempt to take down an underground crime ring that seeks highly valuable information that could bring many working in the intelligence operation to their knees. And the rest of the film is spent primarily with Lorraine as she fights her way through Russian gangsters and also tells the story of her work in Berlin to her intelligence superiors who are investigating the case. So honestly, full transparency, Atomic Blonde was not really a movie that I was looking forward to. When I originally saw the trailer for the film, I'm gonna be honest, it looked and felt like a complete John Wick ripoff. And that's really interesting to me because David Leitch is the co-director of the original John Wick film, but somehow the marketing of Atomic Blonde still managed to make it feel like it was almost a reboot of the John Wick franchise, just with a woman in the leading role. What's interesting though is that Atomic Blonde doesn't really try to be John Wick, at least not that often, but it sure as hell seemed like it was trying to be in the marketing. This is way more of a spy action thriller film than full-on craziness, high-energy action like John Wick is. Atomic Blonde honestly doesn't even really have that many action scenes in it, and the few you do get are pretty brief and underwhelming besides one in the middle of the film. Honestly, besides that one scene, I was just so underwhelmed with this movie because it just felt like it was trying way too hard to be the cool kids at the summer box office. There's a lot of really weird editing and cinematography choices, like having the characters look directly into the camera and speak, and spray paint text showing up a bunch, and the dialogue, which is often super over the top and unnatural. It just all adds up to a style that feels very unnatural and contrived. I think the biggest issue is the story though. It's so convoluted and actually fairly difficult to follow. I mean, there's just a lot crammed into this story, and it never effectively feels like much more than a poor attempt at a Cold War thriller film. I was so underwhelmed and disappointed watching this story play out on screen because nothing about it is all that exciting, all that interesting, or even all that compelling for that matter. This is a movie that just never hooked me with what I was seeing on screen, and I think a huge part of that is just how underdeveloped and how uninteresting these characters are. That's pretty crazy that you can take Charlize Theron and James McAvoy, two extremely prolific and high-profile actors, and throw them into roles that are so poorly written that they simply cannot overcome them. I think if you end up watching Atomic Blonde, you'll be able to recognize that Charlize Theron and James McAvoy are both amazing actors that are really good in their roles, but they simply cannot overcome how thinly written and uninteresting their characters are. It's impossible. This is a classic case of great actors being let down by a poor script, because when I watch these two perform in this film, I love how they're interpreting these characters and how they're delivering their lines with such emotion, but even that can't outdo just how uninspired these characters feel. They feel like cardboard cutouts of your generic run-of-the-mill spy thriller characters. I want to actually jump back to the cool kids at the summer box office point, because there's another area where those techniques handicap the film, and that's probably the most important area, the action. The music choices during some of these action scenes, most of them actually, are like jamming a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't fit. The action scenes are severely handicapped by the music that just kills the entire mood, and instead of heightening the experience, diminishes it. If you ever need to look at an example of just how important music is to high energy action, I think Atomic Blonde should serve as the poster child of what not to do. The action doesn't come across as super well choreographed to begin with, but the music does it absolutely zero favors by just not meshing whatsoever. I also didn't really like the pacing and construction of the story. Basically, the entire movie is told via an interview that Lorraine is having with her two MI6 superiors, played by Toby Jones and John Goodman. The problem isn't necessarily with the approach, it's with the execution. Atomic Blonde does a really poor job at relaying the stakes of the conflict in an effective way. These characters are after some really valuable intelligence, and they always reference how dangerous it could be in the wrong hands, but it's never fully explained in a way that the viewer can truly grasp. The pacing is a problem because there's just so much talking and not enough excitement. Atomic Blonde was absolutely sold as an action film, and while none of us seem to want a John Wick copycat, I think we all were going into this one expecting to see lots of exciting, thrilling action scenes, and you just don't get that. You get like 2 or 3 of them, and they're mostly pretty brief. What you do get is Charlize Theron sitting around in cool outfits or nothing at all but a bra, sometimes nothing at all period, smoking cigarettes and looking really pissed off. That's basically what Atomic Blonde is. It's Charlize Theron looking beautiful and pissed off, but smoking cigarettes while she does it for the vast majority of the film, while we occasionally watch her kick ass every now and then when the film finds time to show us that. The problem is that the movie becomes boring and monotonous way too quickly. You're just waiting and waiting until something exciting actually happens, and and then you get a brief fight scene, then you have to deal with some more silly dialogue and exposition that's overly complicated. It's just not a good formula for an action movie. I also should mention that Atomic Blonde goes full Lord of the Rings Return of the King, and that it has like 4 endings. There were legitimately people in my theater who like walked out because they thought the movie was ending and then realized it wasn't and stood under the walkways on the side to watch the other 3 endings. It almost felt like they shot 4 different endings, then just decided to keep them all in the movie. Overall though, I didn't go into Atomic Blonde expecting greatness, but what I got was one of the worst movies I've seen this year, which is sad considering how great the talent involved is. I did think it had some extremely talented actors who partially overcome character deficiencies and one really good action scene. Sadly, I also felt the story was convoluted, the dialogue was really badly written, the characters were so uninteresting and thinly written, and the music and stylistic choices were forced and unnatural. I'm gonna give Atomic Blonde a 3 out of 10 and definitely recommend you pass on this one in theaters unless you just have to see Charlize Theron kick some ass and you do not care about the story whatsoever. So did you guys see Atomic Blonde yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite Charlize Theron film. I'd say mine is Mad Max. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.